to address the fact that during the video, the interviewer, I guess, for TYT said that this man resents paying for these people, because he makes as much as he does, because he's something along the lines of, because America has provided for him to make and the living that he does, doesn't he owe it back to us? I don't know about you, but I personally had nothing to do with that man's work. I don't know him. I had nothing to do with him making that money. I'm pretty sure it was him getting up every day, driving into work, putting in the hours, using his skill set, using his knowledge to earn that income. Now, coming from a family in Connecticut, also, I can very much sympathize with this guy's position. My father has a decent paying job. He puts in the hours, though. I remember when I was younger, probably he was putting in 60 hours a week, about, also doing emergency calls in. If he had to drive into work at 4 a.m., that's what he had to do. If he had to drive back in at 10 p.m., that's what he had to do. That's what you do when you have a job, when you're trying to provide for your family, when you need to make that money, because you have two kids who are gonna grow up and gonna go to college, and you have an aging mother, and you have a wife, and you will someday retire. You need the money. Let me put it into perspective for people who think that $250,000, like this TYT reporter apparently thinks, that $250,000 is some magic number that unlocks all of the godly possessions to the middle class. $250,000, now, some people argue that, oh, no, that the price that they're setting is after taxes. That's what, after all your expenses, that's people who net $250,000. Whatever, I think that's total BS. I think that how much money we're spending now, if they say that it's people who net $250, that would be the most unexpected decision and most idiotic decision that I think any government official could make, that you are going to tax less people. We already can't afford to live in this country. We can't afford to run our own country on our own money, so I doubt that it's going to be net income. So let's just use the 250 as an example then, because the caller did make that, and it's a number that I'm close enough to being personally familiar with. Let me just give you an idea of when you have a middle-class family, if you're making $250,000 combined income, you don't get the state perks that families who don't make that get. If you're the average family and you're a husband and wife and you live together and you have a dog and 2 children, you're going to be incurring a lot more expenses than people who maybe have the same thing as you but just don't make as much. So let's start with education. If you make $250,000, your kids can't get FAFSA. You're not going to get anything. I mean, I had a friend who her father didn't even make that as much to put her at the $250,000 mark. And she actually got a check from FAFSA when we were graduating from high school for $13 and some cents. That's what came from the government. That's what they were willing to give her. The fact that they even wrote the check is appalling to me. If you look at, again, most kids in New England don't plan on, oh, well, I have to go to a a state school. They don't bank on it. They just kind of choose where they want to go to based on what they want to do. If that's better at a state school, then they go to a state school. If it's better at a private school, then they're probably going to try to get into the private school. Both my brother and I, for example, got into the private schools. Now, his private school was the University of Hartford. They have exceptional programs for many things. His was not one of the ones that they're known for. Although the teachers there were definitely beneficial. These are people who are leading their industry in the industry that he was studying. That education started out, when he started there, around $35,000 a year. The year like if you're the average American family, the 1 year that your kids will be in college at the same time, his cost was just under $40,000 a year. My cost was just over $25,000 a year. That immediately is going to take a $250,000 income down to $185,000. Now, if you're the average American family, you probably live in a home that's around $500,000 if you're a middle-income family. Now, that mortgage is probably going to run you, we'll say conservatively, $36,000 a year. $36,000 a year is coming out of that $185,000. You're down to $149,000. Now, you, again, being the average American family, probably are going to have 3 or 4 cars, because you're going to have one for your wife, one for yourself, one for your husband and one for your wife. I don't want to be stepping on anyone's toes there. Probably one for each child. Let's again be conservative and say that your car payments in total for the year, those are your monthly car payments in total for the year, are going to be $12,000. Now, some people might say, hey, that's not fair. You are using the assumption that they would be paying for their cars on a monthly basis. I'm using that because that's being a little more conservative with the numbers. The reality is that people who make $250,000 a year are probably not going to take out a payment plan for a vehicle, especially when they are middle-income families. They're probably not going to go right for the Mercedes. They're probably, especially for their children, probably going to get a Honda. Maybe something a little different, but they're probably going to spend about $20,000 on a vehicle, brand new, so they might just purchase it. So I'm being kind and using the $12,000 for the sake of the people who are behind this bill and behind taxing these people. $149,000 minus $12,000. You're now at $137,000. Now, you have to insure those cars. The average insurance... sorry, a little mouth lost in my numbers here. The average insurance income out of one of the articles that I got pulled offline was, for the average American family, $12,000 in 2007. Now, let's adjust a few years. We'll say 14, again, being very, very nice with these numbers. $137,000, you're subtracting $14,000 more out of that, you're now at $123,000. Oh, let's not forget, you're getting taxed on $150,000. The US government doesn't care if you have kids in college. They, in fact, encourage you to send your children to college. But they're not going to give you a tax break on it. The taxes on $250,000 is probably going to be north of $40,000. Probably north of $45,000 in most cases. We'll say $47,000. Now, some people might think that's going way too high. I've sat down with people who make less than $250,000 and who paid $46,000, $43,000 in taxes for the year. You have to think property taxes, you pay taxes on anything you own, you pay taxes on anything you make, you pay taxes on anything, the money that you earned in the bank, any taxes on the money that makes. $40,000 in taxes. We're now down to $76,000 a year. This is what a husband and wife will get to hold on to from an income of $250,000 a year. We're down to $76,000.